Welcome to Travolting, hosted by Jeff Sweeney and Stuart Elmore, covering Saturday Night Fever. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everyone.
Hello, folks.
And welcome to my death.
Why? Why did you start this podcast off that way?
No, we'll restart.
No, we're not. We're going on. We're continuing. We're not cutting anything out.
Welcome, folks, to Travolting. I am your host, Jeff Sweeney.
And I'm Stuart Elmore.
Who's also your host.
Co-host.
Who is the co-host?
I tried not to say I'm the host. I'm the co-host.
You're the host.
And the
you are the
producer.
host. Yeah, you're the host with the most. You got 2 jobs.
I do have a lot of jobs. I try to keep you on track and not go off the rails.
I'm the host with the coast, and I coast off the conversation a lot and lose the thread.
Like now.
Yes. Anyway, welcome to Travolting, the only podcast in America that exclusively covers every single film John Travolta has ever been in.
Help us all.
Yes. 66 movies, 66 weeks. Today we are on our 4th episode covering the 4th film of John Travolta's career, Saturday Night Fever. A great movie.
Fantastic movie.
A fabulous movie.
Amazing.
One could even say wonderful.
One could say it was feverful.
Yes. Feverful.
That was a bad one.
Yes. This is a 1977 film directed by John Badham as opposed to John Goodham. No, there is a lot of good ham in this movie.
There is a lot of good ham in this movie.
This is a hammy movie, but it is a good hammy movie.
Yes, not bad hammy.
Yes. He would go on to direct War Games.
Also good movie.
Yeah, it's got Matthew Broderick, so it's fun.
Yeah.
We love hacking the Cold War.
Yeah. Starting a potential nuclear crisis.
Yes.
We love it.
A movie.
But
yes, we're not here to talk about War Games. We're here to talk about Saturday Night Fever.
A great film.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess we can kind of just get started with it.
It's
shortly after The Boy in the Plastic Bubble, which you folks listened to last week and ideally watched.
Thank you for staying with us.
Yes. Ideally.
We're not degrading our podcast at all.
Ideally, you've also watched Saturday Night Fever.
Hopefully.
At this point in Travolta's career, which we've kind of been tracking as we watch these movies, how he himself has developed as an actor and in his career as these movies progress.
Yes. And Saturday Night Fever, I guess you could say, was the main spark.
Yeah, it really shot him off.
It really shot him off. And, this is his second leading role that he's ever done.
Yeah.
And in terms of feature filmmaking, obviously he's had his own TV shows.
Welcome Back, Kotter.
Welcome Back, Kotter.
Show we are not covering on this podcast.
We have said that numerous times to people that we are not covering.
Just for all the people who are at this point inevitably emailing us, where's the Welcome Back, Kotter?
Jeff, we have not received one email.
We have not released a single episode as of the time of this recording.
True.
Most of the world is unaware that we are recording this podcast.
So probably in a month we're gonna get all the emails.
Yeah, we're gonna get all the Welcome Back, Kotter. I'm just trying to cut this off now.
Yeah.
This is an official declaration. Consider this an executive order. We are not covering Welcome Back, Kotter on this podcast.
Fuck you if you think we are.
If you think we are covering Welcome Back, Kotter, find a different podcast. Find yourself the Kotter cast. We don't want any of that film.
We don't want any of that shit in here.
I've heard it's actually a rather lovely show.
I'm sure it is.
Yes, he was wrapping up his time on the show he was in it for another year, but he was wrapping it up, near the process of wrapping up when he did Saturday Night Fever.
Mm-hmm.
A movie that was shot around the same time as The Boy in the Plastic Bubble,
right?
Or shortly thereafter.
Very different hair.
Very different hair. His hair in this is lovely.
I rated this a 7.5 out of 10. Only because I like long hair Travolta, and I'm not going to apologize for it.
I think this is the end of our podcast, folks. Thanks for listening these past 4 weeks.
Shut the hell up. No,
this is an 11 out of 10 for Travolta hair.
I mean, it's 11 out of 10 for just his overall look. Like, he looks really...
He looks fantastic in this movie.
Yes, he's got the look. Not just like good looks, but like in terms of his character. Like he looks like a 1970s New York paint salesman who dances at discos on the weekend.
It's honestly amazing how, compared to the past 3 things that we watched,
Yeah.
this Travolta really settles into his own in this movie. He becomes like a whole cloth. He finally finds his groove as an actor.
It's almost slightly frightening in some sense of like, is this his only role? I mean, we surely find out later that it's not his only role he can play, but it's like certainly one of the roles that if you need a great New York Italian bad boy, let me tell you something. Then it's John Travolta. Like John Travolta does it very, very well.
Yes. I'm going to talk about this a lot during this episode, but the thing that really sells this movie is how confident his performance is.
Yeah.
Even in the moments of unconfidence that his character, Tony Manero, has.
Yeah.
He is so confident in every choice he makes. He's confident in his physicality. He's confident in the character's sexuality. He's confident in every move, every dance. And it translates so well. You just get the impression this guy is a whole character.
And we are going to talk about this later on, but something that I really found like admirable was, do you want any glass of water, by the way?
I'm fine.
Are you sure?
Yes.
I can put a pause on this. If you want any glass of water.
I'm good.
Okay. I'm not cutting this out of the podcast. Like this will be in the podcast.
This is the water cast.
So no, but
this podcast brought to you by Poland Spring Water. No, that's not true. We are not brought to you. We do not have any.
We don't have any sponsors as of yet.
Poland Spring, if you want to be a sponsor, hit me up.
And
tweet me.
At Travolting Pod.
At Travolting Pod and say, hi, I'm a representative of Poland Spring. We want to sponsor your episode.
Thank you. So, but what I really, when we're going to talk about this, obviously, but to go with his confidence, like John Travolta was one of the leading forces behind this production of making sure that the cinematography of this film included full body shots of dancing, because there was a talks in the studio between like, well, we're not totally sure, like if everyone's gonna be able to hold their own, even like, I mean, John Travolta might be good, but is he that good? Like maybe we should just go for just close-ups. And I think I read this on IMDb trivia, so whether it's real or not, but it's reported that he like threatened to walk off the production if they weren't going to include like full body shots of him dancing.
This was a movie he was very much involved in and felt very passionately about, because he had a lot on the line for this. This is his first feature film going into theaters that he would be starring in instead of a supporting role. So this was the make or break moment for him, and you feel that sense of desperation. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to say desperation because I want to talk about his confidence.
Well, it's like Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible with COVID.
Yeah, he knew there was only one chance of success. This was his shot, and he had to take it, and he had to win.
Yeah.
And you get that through every aspect of this film that he had so many hands in, and it just really coalesced to create a fabulous movie.
I mean, and if you think an Oscar nom and a Golden Globe nom is a win, I mean, I would agree with you there.
This movie was only nominated for him, shockingly.
Yeah.
Here's the thing, is I could get nominating him. I could get not giving this a Best Picture nomination, even if I disagree.
Production design.
It didn't get song.
Oh yeah.
The beat, like their Bee Gees were like Staying Alive.
Yeah.
Night Fever, More Than a Woman to Me.
All of those.
Those are released with this album for this movie. Not a single one got nominated.
And there were so many other, like, John Travolta isn't the one and only actor in this film. There's lots of good performers in this movie, too, that also hold their own that I could have seen getting a supporting actor nom. I agree, probably not Best Picture, but when you see the 2001 Odyssey Club, like, what they did to that club, oh my gosh, dude.
It's insane.
They should have gotten a production design. Did they not get nominated for...
They only got nominated for Best Actor, as near as I can tell.
That is just ridiculous. Yeah, it should have definitely been... it did get Golden Globe nomination for Best Motion Picture, Comedy, or Musical, which I suppose is good. Can you really call this a comedy, though?
It's a musical.
But not a comedy musical. It's like a drama musical.
The Martian got nominated for Best Comedy at the Golden Globe, so...
Yeah, that's very true. So, and then the Golden Globes, they did also give Best Original Song, How Deep Is Your Love nominee.
Yeah.
So...
You know what else that should have been nominated for? Best Song at the Oscars.
Best Song at the Oscars.
It is insane that this movie did not get a song nomination. That just blows my mind.
Yeah. And cinematography is fantastic in this movie as well. This was one of the first films where they actually used a Steadicam.
Yeah, it was one of the first Steadicam movies.
Yeah.
But this is one of those movies out of the 70s where every element of it just coalesces together and creates a really enduring piece of, I mean, not just the 70s, any period of film.
Yeah.
Where every element coalesces together and creates a really fabulous piece of art.
There are one thing that I think we should say before going into the plot is that there are definitely elements of this film that are reminiscent of the time, for sure.
Yes.
And just something
But
to be...
I think it all plays into what the movie's trying to do.
Yeah.
Which we'll get into, I guess, by just talking about the opening scene.
Oh, yeah.
Which, yeah. You start hearing Staying Alive.
Yep.
You're immediately set into the groove. And the opening credits, we actually studied this when I was in college. We studied this scene. And it is just going off of what we talked about in that class and just what the movie presents. It's a whole sequence of watching John Travolta walk down streets and enter stores in this sleek suit. He looks like he's king of the world. And you get the impression this guy is
He's
king
something.
of the town.
He must be someone big.
He's someone big. He walks into a pizza store and he's just like, and they're like, "Hey Tony, you want a slice?" And he's like, "Oh, two. I'll take 2 slices.
I'll take 2 slices.
He's doing a very thick Brooklyn accent.
Yeah.
It is effective, actually.
It does a pretty good job.
He will later use that Brooklyn accent to disastrous effect about 40 years later.
Stop. Let's continue with
We will
Saturday
talk.
Fever
We'll talk about that movie when we get to it.
in a year.
It's our blow up episode.
Yeah.
I'm
Anyway.
gonna lose my mind on that episode.
So,
But yes, he's walking around. You get the impression this guy is the king. He has fever.
Yeah.
It's the Saturday night fever.
right.
He sees a woman on the street and he just decides, cool. And he just starts walking in front of her, trying to get her to go out with him, essentially.
Hey, yo.
Yeah, he's doing the, hey, yo, what's your... I mean, they didn't have phones back then, but cell phones. But he's not like, hey, what's your number? But he's doing that move.
What's your Addy?
And you get the impression the girl's a little annoyed.
She's
by
not.
this. She's not into it.
She's probably had this a few times. It's like, get away from me.
Which
creep.
to the casual viewer watching that, it's just like, oh, this guy's kind of a jerk. It's whatever.
Yeah.
But he's on top and he thinks anything is his. But it all plays into what this movie goes for.
Yeah.
Anyway, he's dancing down the street. Staying Alive is blasting. We're looking at him from cameras that are all low, facing up.
A lot of Dutch angles from like the thigh up.
He's very towering.
Yeah.
And then everything is shattered. This illusion is shattered.
And he walks into a paint store.
He walks into a paint store in the back door. He was on a run to grab new paint for the store.
Yeah.
And he puts on an apron and he's selling paint. He's a really good salesman.
Yeah. He's a smooth talker.
It's a dead-end job, but he's good at it.
Yeah.
And his boss is telling him, hey, Tony, you got to do this, you got to do that. And you realize that the guy he was presenting himself to be is not who he is.
Right.
And that's very much one of the main things this movie's going for is the chasm between who the self we present.
This false idolatry. In a way.
And the self that we are.
Yeah.
Such as me presenting myself on this podcast as a put-together person and who I really am.
I'll just let you know he's not a put together person. But I love you, buddy.
Thank you. But yeah, so he's working at the paint store. They close up late at night and he goes home. He's sitting around the house. Oh, there's a great line with his boss that I really like.
Mm. Oh, I think we have the same line.
Yeah, where
is it you don't
his boss tells him, Tony, you got to think about your future. You got to save your money. You're spending it all on suits and because he wants to an advance on his paycheck to buy a suit for the club.
Right. And the boss isn't letting him.
His boss tells him that and he says, fuck the future. And his boss says, you can't
don't
fuck the future.
The future fucks you. I love that line.
This is
so
already such a cohesive film.
Yeah.
It's a funny line. It's a good line.
Yeah.
But it just comes back later in an effective sense at the very end of the movie.
Yeah.
When someone is fucked by their future.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
Which hopefully you have.
Yeah.
So obviously we watched this movie a few days ago. Mm-hmm. So I quickly just read the Wikipedia entry before this just to make sure I had the basic plot beats.
I'm glad you
did. The
did.
Wikipedia entry is like a textual analysis of this movie. Mm-hmm. This person on Wikipedia really went hard on this.
They really went hard into it.
Yeah, they're throwing lines in there like disgusted and disillusioned by what has happened to him. It's like if you want to get everything we're going to say in this podcast in a 40-second bite, read the Wikipedia entry for Saturday Night Fever.
Okay. Sounds great. Yeah. So then he goes back home.
Yeah, he goes back home.
That's when we get introduced to the family.
We get introduced to his family. His
classic Italian.
He has very extremely Italian family,
Roman Catholic
very
Italian.
Roman Catholic. In his room, he has pictures of Al Pacino and Sylvester Stallone.
Rocky. It's a
kind
Rocky
of these
poster.
masculine idols that he looks up to and wants to aspire to be one day.
Yeah. And we learn in the dinner scene of that even though he looks up to all these like masculine idols, his brother is a priest.
Yes, but his brother's a priest, and all he does to his family is work at a paint store and dance.
Yeah.
And they don't see that for his future. They don't see that as a success.
They think he should be a priest, which is like, have you looked at the man?
Yeah.
Does he look like someone who could be a priest? Like, come on, bro.
And his dad is out of a job.
Yeah.
So he's the main. So Tony Manero, which is John Travolta's name, if I haven't said it.
Yeah.
Is the breadwinner of the house, which simultaneously neuters his dad.
Yeah.
Who wants to mock him for being who he is, but he can't.
It puts in a lot of tension.
Because he, too, is neutered in that he doesn't have a job. He feels like he's failing as this masculine figure.
Right, yeah.
And that's the other thing this movie's going for, is it's a look at an extremely toxic sect of masculinity.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, so they're at the house, and we're getting all this exposition about his dad being unemployed and his brother being a priest, and he's going to be going out tonight. So he's like getting all his suit. He's getting a suit on. He's like getting all ready with his comb over and all that stuff.
Mom's telling him, "You should be a priest. You need to get your life together." They actually yell at each other a little bit.
Yeah, there's a little bit.
There's a grandma at the table.
Who has like
who I think says like
lines.
one word in the whole movie,
and it's in Italian.
She's remarkably chill about all the proceedings.
Whose mom is that? Is that the mom's mom or is it the dad's mom?
Never said.
Never said.
Some grandma is just there to eat spaghetti and get her day rate.
You have a spaghetti experience from this movie, don't
yes,
you, Jeff?
I saw them eating spaghetti. I felt very hungry. I paused the movie and I made spaghetti.
Mom's spaghetti.
So if you watch this movie, make sure you have spaghetti on hand,
Arms
fresh or easy to make.
This is a great movie to eat spaghetti too.
Yes,
I'm not gonna lie.
A fabulous movie to eat spaghetti.
Yeah.
I didn't eat a whole box, but I ate a whole plate of spaghetti watching this movie. And it was very good.
Yeah. So afterwards, he meets with his best buds.
He meets with the boys.
And I have all their names here because I did not memorize their names throughout the entire film. But it's Joey, Double J, Gus, and the IMDb synopsis says the diminutive Bobby C. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. I mean,
got him.
It's true, but you didn't need to like really out him like that, man. But yeah.
Honestly, Bobby C is the only one you really need to know the name of.
Yeah.
The rest of them kind of just fold in as these
punks.
Bad influences on Tony.
Yeah. And then we also get a slight introduction to Annette.
Yeah, Annette.
And that's an interesting...
Tony's friend who...
Loves him.
Adores he does not
him.
share the affection.
Kisses the ground he walks on.
Yes.
And he just doesn't want anything to do with her.
The only thing... Because they go to the club and we learn the only thing that Tony actually cares about is dancing.
Right.
And this person we've been presented to from the paint shop through with his friends is a guy who seems put together, but you can tell there's a little bit of tension there.
Yeah.
The second he gets on the dance floor at the club, he is so himself.
Yeah.
That's the only place he can really be who he wants to be when he breaks down.
Yeah.
This tough masculine exterior he has. And just lets himself be Tony Manero.
And he is, not only is he himself, but he's somebody there too.
And he can represent his sexuality in an artistic way.
Yeah.
Instead of the violent way this movie kind of expresses sexuality in many senses.
Right. And so he is like, a giant in this place.
Yes.
Like he's somebody that people look up to.
Everyone knows him.
Everybody knows him. And at one point in this dance scene, I can't remember, does the introduction to what's her name? Gosh dang. The main girl in this. Stephanie. So Stephanie gets a small introduction to this. She is a romantic interest later on in the road that goes sort of awry. But essentially, I can't remember if there's like the dance competition that comes first or if there's the introduction to Stephanie.
He meets Stephanie at the ballet place later.
At later, yeah, but there's like a time when in their night there when the DJ puts on some song and he's like, people can't dance to this, and he's like, well, she's looking like she can dance to it, and I think that's Stephanie, right?
Is it?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, that's Stephanie.
Oh,
So that's like his first introduction to her, and then he sees her get at the ballet place.
Gotcha.
So,
but prior to that, he's walking around the club.
yeah.
Everyone knows him. Annette's trying to go out with him.
Yeah, trying real hard.
There's a dance competition, and he reluctantly agrees to dance with her.
Yeah, Annette is going as hard for Tony as Todd in the plastic bubble is going for Gina.
Yes.
In The Boy in the Plastic Bubble.
A great episode.
All right.
But yes.
He eventually says yes to Annette for doing this dancing competition. And
very reluctantly.
Also, there's one really funny scene when John Travolta is dancing, and he's dancing with two girls because Stephanie leaves and he can't find her. So he's dancing with these two girls, and one girl goes in for a kiss, and she just says, "I just kissed Al Pacino." And I just think that's amazing.
It's very good, very good.
Yeah. So
they wrap up at the club, and they're driving back home, and they stop at a bridge in New York City.
Yeah.
I do not know which bridge.
It's not Brooklyn Bridge.
It looks like the Brooklyn Bridge, but I know it isn't.
Right.
But they stop there, and they're just kind of dancing on the precipice of this bridge.
Actually, I think it is the Brooklyn Bridge because there's a scene later where he talks to Stephanie about the Brooklyn Bridge for a while. Pretty sure it's the Brooklyn Bridge.
It's a
bridge.
I'm just gonna call it the bridge.
It's a bridge in New York City.
It's a New York bridge.
Yeah.
But they literally dance on the edge of this bridge.
Yeah.
This thing that will get them somewhere else, but they can never cross it.
Annette is was watching too in horror.
Yeah, she's very concerned because they're on the edge of it, and at any point they could fall and die from falling into the river.
Right.
The Hudson.
And it would kill them.
Yes, and it would kill them. And they pull a pretty good bit.
Where they jump off the ledge.
Where they all pretend to fall. And Annette screams,
and then
runs over, and she looks down. They were on a platform like 2 feet lower.
Yeah,
so it was a good gag.
Hardy horror.
Good gag, guys.
Yeah. So,
but after the night out in the town, they head home, and he agrees to meet Annette the next day at a dance club.
Mm-hmm.
Ballet place run by a very sleazy guy who records the percentage of women who come to the dance parlor he can sleep with.
60%.
60% is what he is.
It's a little joke that Tony comes in. He's like, "What's the percent? What's the number up to today?" He's like 60.
Yeah.
And then you figure out it's like, oh, it's 60% the number of the women that he brings in, he sleeps with.
Just continuing to show this very gross, toxic world that Tony lives in.
Yeah.
And is forcing himself to be a part of in spite of himself.
You're right. Right.
He's there. He and Annette practice, but he sees Stephanie.
Yeah.
And he is just taken with her, and he thinks that she has a style and a look that he wants.
And she's dancing like a ballet.
Yeah, she's doing like some ballet dancing.
Yeah, not like disco or anything like that.
So he asks her out to coffee. He says, "Oh, you want to get some coffee? Coffee. Let's go get some coffee." She agrees to go with him for coffee.
She's very reluctant, though.
Yes, very reluctant, but he keeps pushing and eventually
keeps putting on the New York push, you know?
Yeah, he keeps New York in it.
Coercing it.
So they go to coffee. And there's a really cool shot following them, walking across the street, and the camera stays outside as it rotates and shows them walking into the restaurant, sitting at the window seat, which is where the camera looks at them through the window.
Yeah. We forgot one scene, though.
What did I forget?
There's a bit where he goes back to work the next morning.
Oh, yes.
And his boss wants to give him a raise. And it starts up with a $2 raise. And Tony plays it off really cool, like, "Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much." It's like, I've never seen anybody happy with a $2 raise before. Let's make it a $4 raise. Like, "Oh my God, $4 is amazing."
His boss is like, "Yo, $5.
$5. And then he's like, "Oh my gosh." So then he goes back home and he talks to his dad about it. And he's like,
Tony's just so disinterested in this job.
Yeah. And he's
that
like,
even if a raise is great, he's like, "It's a raise."
Yeah. And he goes home and he talks to his dad about it. And his dad's like, $5 raise. And he gives him hell for it. And it goes back and forth with their toxic family relationship that they have. So, but anyway, back at the coffee place.
Yes. He gets some coffee.
Yeah.
Coffee.
Did the priest come back already?
I think that's around this time. I don't remember the exact
Yeah.
series of events.
We'll finish this bit and then we'll talk about the priest bit.
But he and Stephanie talk about where they're at in their lives. And
Yeah.
Stephanie talks about how she recently got a job in Manhattan.
Yeah.
And works with a bunch of famous people, and she's throwing these names off.
And Tony's just like,
She's like, I can't remember specifically. She mentions Chris Christopherson,
yeah.
amongst others.
At one point she mentions David Bowie, but that's later in the movie.
That's a big thing is Tony isn't convinced by her story, and I don't think we are either. And that she's saying she meets all these famous people, she lives in Manhattan. It's all sounding a little much.
Right.
And we're meant to ask if like maybe she's presenting a self that isn't real.
Yeah.
This version of her that's, surrounded by famous people all put together. Maybe that's not who she really is. And we never get an answer on that in the movie.
Not really, no.
And I kind of love that. The movie's not interesting. It's just showing how every person can, in some way, put up a different version of themselves.
Yeah.
To survive in a modern world.
Yeah.
She feels undervalued as a woman, so she puts up this version of herself where she's surrounded by fame and importance to help other people see her as important.
Yeah. And when she turns that on Tony, it's like, are you even interested in what I'm saying? And he's like, oh yeah.
He's like, I don't know none of these names.
I don't know any of these people, but it sounds like you seem interested in it and all that stuff. And then she's like, well, what about you? It's like, well, what about me? It's like, well, you think about going to college? And it's like, well, I didn't know about going to college. And basically like, like she's pressing Tony.
I like a cheeseburger.
Yeah, a cheeseburger.
Yeah.
And she's like pressing him on all of on like what he wants to do in the future. And all he can really think about is like, I don't really know. I'm just thinking, about the weekend, and he's not really living things in the future right now. He's just taking it one day at a time.
Yeah.
And so
I remember there's a line about snobs versus slobs.
Snobs versus slobs.
Yeah. And that's kind of how he's presenting this conversation with her.
Yeah.
Is that she's the snob, he's the slob. Which of them is really wrong?
Interesting.
Because he wants the cheeseburger, she gets the salad or the fruit bowl. I can't remember specifically what.
Right.
And he doesn't feel that important. But she does agree to dance with him because she does need a partner to enter the conversation at 2001 Odyssey, which is a great name for a club, mind you.
Yeah.
I love that it's called the 2001 Odyssey.
I mean, and again, going back to the production design element of it, that club looks amazing.
Second best club name next to Club Obi-Wan from Temple of Doom.
Moving on.
A great club name.
Yeah.
He also says, I believe, $4, don't buy $3.
Say what?
He says $4, don't buy $3.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
What do you have to say about that?
Stuart and I are locked in eye contact right now.
I think I'm losing it.
It's just all these little elements that are putting together this battle of ideologies that will define this movie.
Right. It's something and I think we'll get to this more towards the end, but the screenplay of this film was actually based off of a New York Magazine article called Tribal Rights at the New Saturday Night.
Yeah.
And in its own way, the director decided to go truly, I think the author said like it's this film is a work of fiction, but I think it stays true to the theme of what the article is supposed to represent, which is, again, I mean, this toxic world that everybody has to put up a front to survive in and all that stuff.
And only in these moments of dancing for this guy does he really express his true self.
Right. Yeah. So the priest brother, or the brother's
heads home
priest.
and his brother's home.
Yeah.
Frank Jr.
Frank Jr.
His mom is sobbing. Turns out Frank Jr. left the priesthood. The ultimate insult to this family.
Yeah.
Which was so proud of him and saw him as the successful child, and Tony's the screw-up. Tony goes up and talks to his brother, who tells him he felt like he left the priesthood. He didn't really feel God in his life anymore.
Yeah.
And above all that, he felt like he was only a priest because his family wanted him to be a priest.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I really like that there's like a dinner scene with I don't know if this is later in the film, with Tony and his family, and his mom is just so convinced, like, he's going back to the priesthood. Back to the priesthood. It's like, he's not going back to the priesthood. And then they have this, like, again, it's almost like they have an argument every single night at this dinner table, but this one gets even a little bit more.
It's a very dysfunctional family.
Yeah. What was interesting, we forgot about this, but in the first dinner table conversation when they have a fight, his dad like does something with his hair or something. Like he like muffles his hair or hits him in the head. And I guess it was unscripted that John Travolta just like, watch the hair. Yeah. And then Badham decided to leave it in the film because that was totally in character for Tony to do.
Yeah, I saw that fact about his dad hit his head, and he's like, "Hey, watch the hair," and that was a bit of an ad lib.
Yeah. So
fun.
What was interesting about, the Frank Jr. coming back home and not being a priest was, again, going along with the lines of like putting up this front in a world that you feel like you have to live in, that Frank probably wasn't even meant for the priesthood in the first place.
Yeah. And he did it because his family pressured him into doing it.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was his destiny.
So,
and that's not what Tony wants. He wants to be a man of his own.
From that being said, they go back to 2001 for another dance night, but he brings his brother with him. And so Frank Jr. goes to 2001 with Tony and all of his friends, including Bobby C. And Tony does his thing on the dance floor. Yeah. He's living it up, and Frank Jr.'s seeing it, and he's just like, dude, like he's really good, isn't he? It's like really good.
Brother, this is what you are meant to do.
Yeah. And all in the meanwhile, Bobby C. tries to get Frank's opinion. He's like, Father. It's like, don't call me Father. Father, don't call me Father. Yeah.
And they keep saying father. It's a really funny sequence where everyone keeps calling him father, and he's like, I'm not a priest anymore.
I'm not a priest anymore. But Bobby's trying to get his attention, and he was saying something like,
he's like, hypothetically speaking, if a friend of mine got a girl pregnant, is there a way the Pope can issue
absolve us?
Yeah, absolve us if we get an abortion.
Right.
And Frank Jr.'s like, No, that's not a thing that's going to happen.
No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So
Bobby C's a little upset about this.
He is very upset about this. And so that's when Connie, who's Connie?
Connie
makes out with Connie in the car.
It's there's another girl who the rest of his friends are kind of infatuated with. Yeah,
so there's another like make out scene or whatever.
But you know what I love about this sequence and several others is that they use kind of these disco-fied versions of classical pieces, including one called like Disco Beethoven, which is just cool.
Yeah.
And it adds this very epic feel to some of these sequences where it just is like this classical music is booming with this disco backing to it. It all feels very epic in scope. Kind of playing Tony's story as representative of a larger piece than it is.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
I agree. And so it's at this point that the brother has decided to go ahead and leave early.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to stay at the club that much longer. And so
and Tony's trying to convince him to stay.
Yeah.
But he understands it's not his scene. He just recently got out of the priesthood, so he's probably a little more conservative than Tony is, who's willing to just bear it all on that dance floor.
Yeah. And I think we had missed a quick thing that there was a gang hit by one of Tony's friends who was in the hospital. And so this was a little bit beforehand, not too much beforehand, but when they are like looking for people, to like hit up, they decided they can't they don't find anybody, or they don't find anybody worth taking on. So they decide to like table that for another night. Stay tuned. We'll get back to that later. But then back to the discotheque when they're like all over there. And so his brother leaves and leaves early. And it's at this point when they are, I think this is when they actually do the bridge thing in this movie. We've been jumping around plot wise in this.
Yeah, hopefully you've watched this movie and are on our description.
Yeah.
But hopefully we're achieving some semblance of the plot and kind of what this movie is all about.
But after this scene, essentially, Tony goes back home and he realizes Frank is actually moving out.
Yeah, Frank is leaving, and on his way out, he more or less tells Tony
that your dream is to dance.
Yeah, your dream is to dance. Do it.
Yeah.
Don't let our parents, don't let your friends, don't let anything stop you from doing what you want to do.
Yeah. So then at this point, he goes back to the dance studio to practice with Stephanie again, and he sort of scoffs at her for not being there. And so she's like, I didn't tell you I was going to be there.
Yeah.
And so, but it's at this point when
she's rejecting all of his attempts to kind of get to know her better.
Yeah, yeah. So, but except that they then all the boys come to the dance studio and sort of meet them up, and what I love about this scene is you could tell that Tony's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Because it's like all of his gross and toxic masculine friends are with this like very put together, mature woman who's obviously older than him by some amount. And it's just like, you could tell in that scene, he's like a little bit uncomfortable. He's like, hey guys, let's not talk about that right here. And so they go to White Castle together. Yes. Hate White Castle. We are never going to be sponsored by White Castle. Yes. White Castle, if you're listening to this, I don't like your products. Go fuck yourselves. Your burgers are trash. We're never sponsoring White Castle. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
Okay.
We're alienating so many people.
We're never sponsoring White Castle, but they go to White Castle. And
very vintage White Castle.
A very vintage White Castle. Well, I mean, it is the 70s, so everything's vintage in that regard. And we get like this little bonding scene between Stephanie and Tony and his friends. And she's not like super blending in, but she's kind of going along with a little bit of that. Like, there's one part when they're sitting at the table and they start like barking like dogs and making a scene in the middle of the restaurant. She's not like totally freaked out about it.
But she's seeing this side of Tony she hadn't seen before,
which I think puts her in a little bit more. Like she almost, I think that was like the turning point to when because now as she's seeing the more true side of Tony is when she's actually allowing herself to give into it a little bit.
But it's not even just the true side of Tony. It's almost what the version of him that she saw is trying to hide from. Yeah. Because he's not into that scene with his friends. Right. He just does it because he feels like it's where he's supposed to be. Yeah. It's just like he feels he's supposed to be at a paint store. He's not really worth anything.
Yeah. So it's one of my favorite lines in this movie. So when they're all walking out, Bobby C. is it asking Stephanie. He's like, hey, Stephanie, I have a friend who got a girl pregnant. And I just want to know, like, if you were in that position, would you rather get an abortion or get married? It's like, who would I be marrying? And he's like, well, me. And then she just said, I think I'd rather have an abortion.
Poor Bobby C.
Bobby C just gets shit on this entire movie.
And it has tragic results.
It does have tragic results. So,
but yeah, he and Stephanie continue to practice. Yeah. All the while, all these things are piling up in his life. Yeah. That are driving him more away from what he wants. Yeah. And like then, as you mentioned, there's the gang subplot, which I forgot about.
Yeah, there's a gang subplot in this whole thing.
One of their friends gets beat up, and he thinks it was by this gang called the Barracudas.
I didn't know their name.
So Tony and his friends decide they're gonna beat the Barracudas in their own turf and drive their car through
the garage.
And then jump out and start fighting this gang.
Of course, Bobby C, the little shit he is, backs the car up out of the garage and makes a run for it.
Yeah, runs for it. And so Tony and his friends have a slug match with the Barracudas.
We love the 1970s punch sound effects. Yeah. It is like very punchy.
Yes.
Very punchy.
And then they all run away. They're now all bruised up. And it's disaster because this is the night of the dance competition.
Yeah. There's the thing before that, and that is when he helps Stephanie move into her apartment in Manhattan. Yes. And
we're really jumping around, aren't we?
We are. And this is a real turning point because we've probably done this with Plastic Bubble as well, probably. But anyway, so he's helping Stephanie move into her place, and that's when we see a man. Yes. There's a man there. Yes. And
he was moving out.
Who was moving out. But Tony is obviously like, oh, you never told me about this guy. And that's when they get in the car, and he's like, obviously really pissed about it. He's like, who's that guy? Woo, and what am I?
She's like, I never said I was going to go out with you. We're dance partners.
Right. And then...
And Tony, being misled into this world that he comes from, can't help but feel like she was owed to him. That he deserves her. And he's pissed that she didn't tell him she's with someone else and is rejecting him.
And this was even like, this was an amazing scene that I really liked for Stephanie, because they're in the car and she's telling him it's like, he was a guy that I met at work. I was new. I felt stupid and he helped me. And it sort of alludes to this experience that she was sexually harassed at work, and essentially, and that she was promised favors for sexual favors, for doing that.
And she doesn't want that in her dance life.
Yeah, right. And so,
which is the same place Tony is at.
Right. So
So they're the two wayward souls.
They're the two wayward souls. So I think we are missing a couple other plot points, but we can just get into the dance studio if you'd like.
I mean, that's the important stuff.
Yeah, there's like one bit when his boss fires him for a day or something.
Yeah, his boss fires him for a day because he wants to go
actually help her move out.
Yeah, help her move out.
Because when he gets in the car with her and she packs all this stuff in, he says, I lost my job for this. She's like, oh, really?
Yeah.
And they just, okay.
And she's, and
move it on.
And she's like, is that supposed to make me love you or something? Or just be like, that was kind of stupid.
Yeah, that was kind of stupid. So
it's somewhat just taking down the tropes of these romance movies where it's like, I quit my job for you, and then they would kiss and embrace or whatever. But she's like, oh, cool, thanks.
I got my
Good
days
for
off.
You. She's like, yeah, my day is off.
Yeah. So this is after the whole beat up scene.
Yes, they get to the dance club.
They get to the dance
for the
club.
final dance number.
Yes.
Which is extraordinary.
It's amazing.
That is an amazing sequence.
Yeah.
I mean, I read that they rehearsed extensively for that. Obviously.
Yeah.
It's all done in wides.
You see everybody's footwork. You see everybody's full bodies, all their arms, everything.
Stephanie and Tony, the two actors, are just in lockstep. They really have the moves down.
There's an amazing shot when they're dancing that they do this dip and kiss.
Yeah.
And the camera does this
it does
roll action.
It does the turn.
It rolls right and booms down like an arc motion.
Yeah.
With their
it's it's on a tripod and someone just leaned it to the side.
Looks right. And it looks amazing. And then at one point, I have a little beef with this, and that is they just stand there and kiss for a while. And I'm like, this is still during their dance.
Yeah.
See, I'm like, is this supposed to be good dancing? Because they're just standing there and kissing.
Well, in plot or not plot terms, but in idea terms, it's the moment where the two of them are finally really seeing each other.
Yeah.
Because they're only themselves when they're dancing.
Right.
And they get it right then and there. And that kiss is genuine.
Yeah.
It's the love that he wanted and that she kind of felt, but only with this Tony.
Right. So then, after them, the Puerto Ricans.
The Puerto Rican couple dances. And they do a Puerto Rican inspired dance.
Yeah.
I don't specifically know what it's called.
But it's very good.
Yes, but it's very good. And
it's
Tony thinks it's better than his.
But not even just that. It's apparent to the audience that they were better. Because I even wrote down before that the awards that, they should have won the competition. Yeah. It's so apparent to the audience, they're so much faster and quicker. And
imagine being the dance coordinator for this movie. And you have to put together a show-stopping number for John Travolta to have at the end. And then you got to do one that's better immediately after for support for a character who doesn't have any lines.
This couple has to beat that couple realistically, on screen. Okay.
And it's extremely discouraging
to Travolta because he sees it.
They still win.
Yes.
And he thinks this is a false award.
Yeah.
We didn't earn this.
It's to Travolta's demise where he knows that they were better, as does the audience. And so at one point, they're given the trophy, but he's just not happy about it. So at the club, and Stephanie's trying to cheer him up in this, well, we still won. And so with all that being said, they are they're not getting along. And so Travolta, is that your computer?
That was my computer. Sorry.
God damn it, Jeff. So Travolta goes to the Puerto Rican couple and he just hands them the trophy.
Yeah, he's like, you guys won.
And the cash prize, but doesn't take the second place stuff with him, which is hey, can we trade? No, he just gives them more money.
Yeah, he feels completely disqualified by this. And Stephanie runs out after him why? What is the deal? What's wrong with you?
And so then they get in his car, and that's when Choney thrusts himself upon Stephanie, and he's
finally given into this gross version of himself, and he essentially tries to rape her.
Yeah.
It's a very scary scene.
It is a very scary scene.
Both in watching the corruption of this character and in just the action that he's doing.
Yeah.
She gets out and she calls him a bunch of names and runs off.
Yeah.
Because she thought they had finally had a connection on that dance floor, and then Tony felt like that connection was completely shattered by realizing even this thing, the only place in the world where he feels real and true
isn't.
He felt like that was even a lie.
Right. Yeah. So then after she runs off, then the boys come back and they're with Annette.
Yeah, the boys are all with Annette.
And they are high on drugs.
Yeah, they're all loaded, and they get into a car and they start driving. And in the back seat, one of them forces himself on Annette.
Yeah, very disturbing scene.
This is the camera work here is it's all close-ups and quick cuts.
Yeah,
it's a very you feel as high as these characters do, and not like just in a drug sense, but like as very heightened as their emotions and their feelings and moves are right now.
Right.
And they go back to their spot on the bridge.
Yeah.
Where they dance and they walk along the barristers on this precipice of their lives.
And Annette, who is crying to herself in the car.
Yes.
And John Travolta, who just doesn't have any sympathy for her at all.
Who has no idea what's going on with his life anymore.
He's like, are you happy now? Now you're a whore. And I'm just like, Jesus Christ.
Yes.
Like, it's that whole sequence is just like, it's heartbreaking for you to watch because you feel like this whole momentum with the dance, practicing, him connecting with Stephanie.
Like this was a story of him becoming a better person.
And then it all comes crashing down.
Yeah.
And then we're not even at the end of the movie yet.
Yeah.
I mean, we're getting closer to the end, but it's like you think this can't be like heading towards the end.
Yeah.
Because if we're heading towards the end, the direction that we're heading in is not a good place. So then
Bobby C starts dancing on the steel beam of the bridge. But he's very high, he's very drunk, and he's teetering on the edge. Tony and one of the other guys go out to try and pull him back.
Yeah.
They're unsuccessful, and Bobby C falls and dies.
Well, and Bobby, before that, Bobby C was like, you know, you never called me, Tony.
Yeah.
Because he promised, like, Bobby that he was going to call him and talk to him.
And talk through his troubles.
Little, you know, demise with getting a girl
This
pregnant.
whole time, Bobby C's been bringing that up and being like, what should I do?
Yeah, and nobody's been, like, giving him any
Nobody's helped him. Nobody's believed his troubles are real.
Yeah. And then he finally takes his own life.
And he takes his own life, and he falls off the bridge.
Yep.
Cut to Tony talking to the police. They didn't find a body. They don't think they will.
Yeah.
And Tony just walks off from that scene. He walks away from his friends, walks away from his life, and he gets on a train, and he takes it to downtown Manhattan.
Yep.
And it's this very long sequence of just him sitting, head in hands, on this subway train as he removes himself from all of his terrible influences from all of his life and reckons with what he's done.
Yeah.
Which is, you know, attempt rape on one woman, insult another who was just a victim of it.
Yeah.
Feels like he was cheated in the dance competition. He just beat up a bunch of people.
Just let his own friend commit suicide.
He's in the lowest state a person can be.
Yeah.
And he gets to Annette's apartment. I mean, not Annette. Stephanie's apartment.
Yeah.
She's not pleased to see him.
Right. Who would be?
Understandably.
Yeah.
But she eventually lets him in, and they sit down and they talk. And he kind of opens up how he feels like he's been pushed into all these places that he didn't feel himself, and that he only ever really felt himself with her.
Yeah.
And on that dance floor. And she tells him, or he asks if they can be friends. He doesn't want a romantic connection.
Yeah, just
all
be
he
friends.
wants is to be friends. And she agrees that there's a possibility for that.
Yeah.
And the movie leaves us with that. We go with some Bee Gees. And it's this kind of optimistic ending that even from like the worst kind of guy, there's a chance for the future. Like,
one would say
it can get better.
No sequel was necessary.
Yes, they never made a sequel to this movie, and we'll absolutely not be covering it on this podcast. I've never seen the sequel.
I've never seen the sequel.
Staying Alive.
For folks listening, there is a sequel.
It's called Staying Alive.
It's called Staying Alive. I don't even know what the storyline is.
We will find out.
We will find out, but there's apparently a sequel to this movie, and it makes me cringe just knowing that there's a sequel, because this is the most non-sequel-esque film there is. Like,
it's a movie about an extremely masculine dude learning that he can embrace his feminine side.
Yeah, and just
they're like, let's make a sequel to it. I mean, I do believe that any movie can have a good sequel.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any story that cannot have a good sequel made to it. But this is one where I would have to be hard pressed to figure out what that would be.
Yeah, I mean, directed by Sylvester Stallone.
Yes.
So we're gonna find out eventually. But yeah, no, this film has a lot of moving bits in it, in the sense that you have Tony's main storyline with like the dance competition, you have the gang storyline, you have the priest, the brother priest storyline, you have Annette, and just so many different interlocking bits. And like I will admit, like this is like a film critic's movie.
Yes.
And I can see like some people who may have already watched this before this podcast, or maybe listen to this podcast, who then go on to watch it, and would then say, you know, I can see this not doing it for some people, because it is very much like there's a lot of subtext and there's a lot of moving storylines.
But even if that's not something, even if you're not interested in looking at this movie in a thoughtful way, it's still an extremely impressive piece of filmmaking.
Yes.
And it's also just fun to watch.
Yes.
Like, it's a very fun shot. I mean, there's terrible things that happen. But the dance sequences are kinetic. There's a lot of energy. The camera is always moving.
Yeah. Wouldn't recommend you watching this with, like, family and friends, but maybe, like, I don't know if I recommend this on a date either. Maybe like a group movie night or something like that.
I think it can open up some good discussions, but it can also just be a good movie to watch any night.
Yeah.
You know what? I watched after this. I rewatched Taxi Driver recently because I feel like it's a very similar movie about a guy who just wants a bigger dick than the guy running for president of the United States. And that's the plot of Taxi Driver. Yeah, but they're very similar movies about 70s masculinity and the dangers of it unchecked, without finding a way to express that anger and frustration in a more artistic way and in a more human way.
Yeah.
And that is what Tony has with his dancing, is he finds the human and artistic way to express his frustrations.
Did John Badham like do much more films after this? I'm trying to look up his filmography.
War Games is the only one I know. Do you know who almost directed this?
Who almost directed?
John G. Avildsen, who did Rocky.
Oh,
he left like a few weeks before production started.
Yeah, the only two films I see that I recognize are War Games and Saturday Night Fever. He directed some Supernatural episodes.
Yeah,
for people who like that, and he directed a lot of TV. A lot of TV. It looks like up until 1997, Incognito was one of his like last like feature films, and the rest were like TV movies or TV series.
Interesting.
That's what it looks like. That's on the director thing.
Yes, Saturday Night Fever. After it, came out, huge hit.
Very
huge hit.
Very huge.
It cost $3.5 million, made $237 million.
A lot of money.
Which is like 100 times multiplier. So 200 times multiplier. They had to do a re-edit of the movie in PG, because the movie's rated R. They did a PG edit of the movie so that younger
Paramount,
people could
right?
see it. It was a Paramount film, so that younger people could see the movie and hopefully get something out of it. Has a huge success on home media, huge critical success. It's part of the National Film Registry at the Library of Congress. Yeah. And as we all know, the Bee Gees music from it is what really is the most enduring legacy. Yeah. It was it sold, let me see. It sold 20 million copies. It was the top-selling album in history until it was topped by the Thriller album by Michael Jackson.
I read that Bee Gees wasn't even the original music that they had on set. Yeah. They had like different songs for Travolta to dance to, and that they just replaced it with Bee Gees music.
And that's what I'm talking about. This movie is just it's just a poster child for the amazing way that film comes together from all these elements that don't inherently work, coming into one cohesive piece. Yeah. And sometimes you just get a really beautiful piece of film like this.
Yeah. Well, Saturday Night Fever.
This movie was also just called Saturday Night at one point, and then they hired the Bee Gees, and they had a song called Night Fever. So they're like, well, we'll add the fever at the end of it.
Perfect choice.
And imagine this movie just being called Saturday Night. You think it would be about Saturday Night Live.
Right.
But no, we had Saturday Night
very
Fever.
Generic. Yeah. And so this is like a predecessor film to this is 1 year before Grease. Yeah. This is 3 years before Urban Cowboy. So
this is the movie that turned John Travolta into a household name. Yes. I mean, he had been big on Welcome Back, Kotter, TV show we're not covering.
We're not covering Welcome Back, Kotter.
But he goes from being that guy on a sitcom to an Oscar-nominated actor.
Yeah.
Who's willing to just bear all in a movie and really just dig deep into his characters. He's worked with Brian De Palma at this point, who will reuse him soon.
Yep.
And it's just it's a star-making performance, is what it is.
Yeah, it absolutely is, and I'm sure he looks back upon it, thinks of it as good old days, Saturday Night Fever.
This whole movie is just something that's always gonna stick around as a piece of the culture. Even removed from all its contexts, just as a snapshot of disco culture in the 70s.
I think this would be a great family film to watch when you're older.
Yeah.
So, like, if you are, like, in your 20s or your late teens and you have, like, parents who maybe grew up in the 70s, I would love to get the reactions watching this film. Because they obviously probably seen it. They've probably seen it before. But imagine watching it with them and, like, getting all these, like, like, tokens from the past of, like...
Can I just say how much I love the 70s?
Yeah.
All the aesthetics, the look, that's the history of it. And, even the movies, like, they're all just the film stock of the 70s is even just such a unique look. I'm very fascinated by the 70s. And I love any movie or anything, that bit of media that brings me into that time period that I find so interesting.
It really is. And this is John Travolta said something really interesting in an interview once where he said, like, this movie was filmed, like, after the disco craze.
Yeah, the disco craze was
the disco craze was really from like 73 to 76 or something. And he said, like, yeah, like it was kind of coming out after that. But then when this film came out, like, reinvigorated it.
Yeah.
And discos were a thing once again.
And disco lasted until Reagan, and then the rest is, as they say, history.
For better or for worse, we shall say.
Yes.
For better or for worse.
For better or for worse.
You know what? This last thing I just want to say before we close out, the one scene I think this film is missing.
What?
It's roller skating.
Roller skating? Just you directed a movie based on roller skating.
I did, but I think in the 70s,
this is
roller
a
skating.
plug.
Roller skating is huge in the 70s, and because it was like disco based stuff, like you would roller skate to disco songs. It's just the one scene I think is missing. Is he could have gone roller skating. Imagine John Travolta on roller skates.
I mean,
oh my goodness,
I am not entirely unconvinced that over the next 62 episodes, we will eventually see him on roller skates or skating.
I'm looking forward to it.
There's a not zero chance of that happening.
I am so.
I don't know for certain, but
if I don't see John Travolta roller skates, I'm quitting this podcast.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, you'll quit on the last episode when we watch the final movie and realize you will not roller skate. You will walk out on our last episode.
It'd be like, is he in? Is he doing it in Speed Kills?
Speed Kills.
Speed Kills. All right, Jeff, shall we close out?
Yeah. Thank you all guys for listening. Hope you found something to latch on to here and enjoyed our discussion of Saturday Night Fever. We'll be back next week with a discussion of Grease. Grease is the word. We'll be joined by a very special guest for that one. We hope you guys will tune in to listen. As of this moment, day of recording, which is January 27th of 2021, you can watch Grease on Prime Video if you have that capability. So if you want to watch it in advance of our episode, I would, as always, recommend it. Gives you a little more context so you can take part in our discussion in your head.
Yeah. A good majority of you folks will have already seen Grease, but maybe just watch it again. Mm-hmm. Maybe watch it again. I really enjoyed talking about this with you, sir. This was a swell episode.
Swell episode for a great movie.
We really burst the bubble on that one, and happy we were able to do that.
Yes.
So.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Did we plug our social media already?
I have not plugged our social media. Make sure, first of all, folks, to rate, review, and subscribe if you enjoyed this episode or any of its predecessors. It really does help. Every review, every rating, every like on whatever platform helps us reach more people, helps us feel like we're doing something good here. You can tweet us at Travolting Pod or reach us on Instagram at the same. You can pop into our Reddit, r/Travolting, if you have anything you want to discuss about this episode. If you have any questions or comments, you can email us travoltingpodcast@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at Jeff W. Sweeney. You can find Stu on Instagram
At Stuart Elmore 95.
Yes, at Stuart Elmore 95.
Thanks for not getting it wrong.
Yeah, and special thanks to Rebecca Johnson for
Love
our
you,
graphic
Becca.
design, and Michael Van Bodegum Smith for our music.
Thank you,
which
Michael.
you're hearing right now.
It's amazing.
Thank you all for listening, and hope to see you next week.
All right.
Hope you hear us next week.
Let's play it out. Bye, folks.
Bye, folks.